Howdy, howdy, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Unofficial Starborne Podcast, featuring yours truly, head moderator Dahl, on the Starborne Discord. We've also got my good friend Admiral.
Hey.
And we've also got a new face to these podcasts, my good friend Pizzatime.
Hello.
All right. Now, if we get straight into the game, you'll notice that Admiral leads the core on server 1. We've also got Pizzatime, who leads the hive on server 1. And of course, I am the former leader of the Singularity. We've all been a part of the same coalition, and I think now is the time that we finally delve into a bit of the strategy, the politics, the thoughts behind the decisions being made by other members of the server 1 community, and just everything that has been leading up to these final few days. So, without any further ado, is there anything that you two would like to say?
I just gotta say, it's been a great game, man. Little exhausted at week 11 now.
Yeah, now that the combat's picked up, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, this iteration of Starborne is definitely a little bit heavier on the grind side, but hey, man, this late game, if it was like this the whole game, I would love it. I would enjoy every second of it. I don't even mind getting exhausted, but hey, man, this is the price you pay for being a no-life, so. Anyway, with all that being said, we'll jump right down into the itinerary. So, Singularity, as you all know, has been present in multiple alphas. We've been in Alpha 6, we've been in Alpha 7, and then we headed straight into the pre-alpha of Alpha 8, which is the current alpha. Now, there were a lot of preparations that were behind getting us to this state, because whenever Alpha 7 had ended, a lot of people were burnt out on the game, and it was pretty difficult to, get a full alliance of people, and then on top of that, get enough for our allies, UGA and the Hive, respectively. So, as we went into the pre-alpha, we had quite a logistical problem we had, because we can't just charge into a new alpha as the most organized group of people, just shorthanded on people. So we got straight into recruiting. Some of the faces that you see within the actual the leadership, some of the members as well, were actually from the pre-alpha, so that's a good incentive for everyone to stick around for the next pre-alpha. Wink, wink. But one of the faces was my good friend Pizzatime, because we had a spot open for a second in command within the Hive, because unfortunately New Mans couldn't make it. And then on top of that, almost everyone else within UGA and the Hive, along with about maybe half of the members of Singularity, and the core wasn't planned for at all. So we'll get to that point. Don't worry. But it was some pretty quick days that we had to find a lot of dedicated people. Thankfully, we did. Who do you guys think your favorite pre-alpha people would be, ranging from Clegg to Gutsy to, just any of the, to Stoof to Odie? I know you love Odie. I know you do.
Yeah, that guy has saved my ass so many times. He held the #1 all-time battle defending me up until the attack on the Dyson Sphere.
Yeah, he's a dedicated imperialist, especially. Dude.
That guy's a rock star.
It's a good thing. Good thing we found him.
Yeah. What about you, Pizza? I know that you were rather new in
Yeah, I
this whole
started in
scenario.
the pre-alpha, so can I be my own favorite player? Is that allowed?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind it.
I'd say no.
I think it's rather.
I don't know too many people that started in the pre-alpha. I don't know. I'm really not familiar with who started in the pre-alpha and who started before, so I don't really think I'm at liberty to say, honestly.
Well, besides Dahl, who's your favorite?
Person in game?
Yeah, like who has helped you out a lot?
I gotta say, One of Many helped me out a lot, and Nuffy helped me out a lot. Just like
Yeah.
getting used to the co-leader type thing, and then just learning the game and interacting with people. They helped me a lot.
Nuffy was an amazing choice as well. I remember the decision to actually bring him on board was something that we were pretty iffy on, because originally we were trying to work the old crew into the Singularity and the whole coalition, but we got turned down, unfortunately, at that moment, and then we didn't know what to do, so there was another alliance that happened to be around at that time called the Drop Bears, and Mr. Nuffy and Harbinger and all those guys, they were super helpful towards us. I've never met kinder people on this game. It's, barring the people who tried to kill me prior to joining Singularity, but, just Nuffy and everyone else have just been super helpful. I've really enjoyed the fact that we actually got to onboard them.
I remember when we almost destroyed them based on their name.
Yeah, that was the whole decision to fight them. Was we want to. Jeez, my dog. We wanted to fight them in the pre-alpha because we were looking for a fight and we didn't want to fight the old crew. And we just decided to go for the low-hanging fruit, and we were like, Drop Bears are next. So I decided to extend the olive branch, see if they wanted to come join us. Thankfully, they did, because it would have gotten pretty messy otherwise.
Well, and remember, Crash Desktop was around too. Those guys, the start of Alpha, they kind of made a name for themselves too.
Oh, of course they did.
They were right up until they left. But that's
Right
another
up
issue,
until
I
then.
guess.
Yeah, they were. What were they? They were either number 1 or number 2 alliance all the way up until they decided to leave for.
They were second, yeah, second and first.
Yeah. Well, I guess that was their choice to end up moving there. Hey, man, that's server 2 stuff. We ain't interested in any of that. We're interested in the server 1.
Yep.
All the things
Alpha
that went
1.
on there. Yep. So, moving on from there, we decided to go. We ended up getting enough people to fill up Singularity. We got decent numbers of people within UGA and Hive, and we decided, hey, we can't recruit any more experienced people, and we decided to go and decide what our plan was going into the next alpha. Now, I remember there were some pretty big discussions that we had regarding all the sectors and everything that we wanted to choose. There was a lot of thought about going into Gemini because UGA wanted to be true to their namesake, and then there was us wanting to go into, what was the other one? Virgo. We really wanted to be in Virgo.
And Serpents.
And Serpents as well. And what we ended up doing was we were originally going off the Alpha 7 map, and we had seen the new map that had come along with the pre-alpha, which looks kind of like this map, but it only showed the inner sectors. It did not have any of the outer sectors at all. So we were completely surprised whenever the new map was actually dropped, and we had to modify our strategy on the fly. I know a certain somebody here decided to spawn in the wrong sector on accident.
So we had decided on Serpents, and then the day the alpha went live, that plan had changed to Cygnus, except, the wife had me on a honeydew errand, and so I was late for the first 10 minutes of the server, so I ran upstairs, logged in, started my stream, and you can actually see my stream where I'm like, oh, select Serpents, and then loading screen, and then, oh, fuck.
Yeah, that was rat. I was completely surprised. I was like, well, what am I going to do now? This is like one of our star players here, and he's already off in his own sector. So,
which turned out to be a bit of a boon.
Yeah,
it worked pretty well.
Surprisingly, I was thinking that at some point you were going to move over here, and that we were going to have to, complete the logistics of bombing all your stations, so then you get the IP for. But, the only person we ended up doing that was for Egg. Unfortunately, he is no longer here playing with us at Singularity due to some health issues, but gone but not forgotten. Egg was always one of my favorite guys. But
that guy
anyway.
inspired me to play Starborne. He's the reason why I'm so hooked on it. I look up to him.
I'll be sure to include a nice message to him and include the video where he gets mentioned as well. But yeah, moving on from Egg. We had some pretty difficult logistical issues whenever, Admiral and Odie, and it was also Egg who also spawned in the wrong system. And we were just like, well, shit, what are we going to do? So everyone else is up here in Cygnus. And then the Hive and UGA decide, well, we put them in Gemini because we had originally thought that the competition was going to be much more fierce for individual sectors. So we had thought, hey, Singularity can pretty much hold its own in Cygnus no matter what happens. We'll figure out on conquering the server the server at a later date, but for now we just have to figure out how to work this whole sector thing out. With 19 sectors, I believe, it was a rather, it was a given that Hive and UGA, which were full of the newer players, were going to have a bit more of the issues. So we decided to group the two of them together. What were your thoughts on the whole grouping you two together? Because I know that there was some gripe about that early on.
It just got so crowded so fast. We just needed other places to go. Thankfully, Hydra was there for us.
Yeah, I think we also tried to put in drop bears in. We also tried to put in drop bears in Gemini as well because they were one of our client. But then Harbinger ended up spawning in Cygnus, and then it just becomes a whole new issue.
Drop bears were like half Cygnus, half Gemini, and then it was a mess.
Yeah, this is some advanced planning that you guys have to do if you ever end up deciding to join as an alliance into a new server, because who knows what'll happen in the beta, who knows what'll happen in these next few alpha servers with the game changing so much that the map might be totally different. There might be different logistical problems that you're going to run into. Supply range might change. Who knows what'll happen. It's just these are all things that we didn't plan for, and we had to find a plan for immediately. And so the early game, especially on my end, because I was leading Singularity at this point, it was rather stressful. And that was just choosing the sector. That was just figuring out where we had to go. There were a lot of discussions between us about which sector would actually be the best one to be in.
Yeah,
and we'd only had we only had like maybe a day or two to actually look at the new map and then decide what we wanted to do. And there were talks about, hey, we wanted to go into Libra in the center of the galaxy, or we wanted to go into an inner ring like Pegasus or something like that. And then finally the decision was made that Cygnus would probably be the best one. But that only came after the Serpents debacle, where, we had decided on we wanted to go into Serpents for a while. And then in the last few minutes, we said Cygnus is definitely the place to go. So, and then, of course, all the other alliances that we ended up interacting with, such as the Old Crew, Crash the Desktop, eventually Baka, because we didn't even know they were going to join the game. All these alliances started joining in different parts of the galaxy, and we had to respond to it accordingly. Again, I'm spending this much time, and it's only the early game talking about this. Yeah. So you can see that Starborne is a rather involved process from beginning to end. So.
But as a player, don't feel overwhelmed. We're talking as a coordinated alliance, jumping into an alpha together, with several alphas under our belt.
Right, coordinating 80 people is no small task in any game that you play. But hey, man, it's possible. We've shown it. Anyway, so with that out of the way, we ended up choosing a sector, and obviously there were other alliances on the map. We knew that we didn't want to spawn into another alliance, so we tried to avoid being within one of the central, sectors. And we thought all throughout that time that, oh man, these smaller alliances are probably going to be from out-of-game alliances. They're going to come in from, make their own coalitions, not interact with us. And we were partially proven right with that whenever it came to Crash the Desktop and the boys out in Sagita, Baka, who I'm sure everyone is left to talk about at this point. But yeah, we were totally unprepared for that. We knew that there was another alliance that was very big within the pre-alphas, known as Iron Bank. Unfortunately, those guys. I had gotten on some good terms with them, but I still had no idea what was going on. So we ended up trying to speak with them, and they decided against going into the alpha. So we were like, okay, well, that's just another freaking month of my time wasted. But hey, man, this is the life that you live whenever you decide to go into diplomacy. as like your only strong suit in this game, because I am awful. But anyway, so the early game diplomacy happened. We've already established contact with the old crew. They said in the pre-alpha that they were going to see what would happen, and then we would figure out, around the middle to late game what we wanted to do with each other. I got in touch with the Crash the Desktop guys, and we decided to make an alliance with them because Omniblivion is a super nice guy. He is one of the nicest people I've met in this game. There's a lot of nice people in this game that I've noticed, but Omni's one of the nicer ones. He was totally upfront and said, hey, I'm fine with working with you guys. Just remember, if you hit second place, that'll probably be the only time that we end up helping you. If you're in first place, I don't want to fight for first place. I want to fight for second place to get into first place. So he and his guys, Wildly Inappropriate, and all those guys were all very interested in, being contenders for the game. So we prepared accordingly.
And as new players, they actually did really well on the charts, on the initial rankings.
Mm-hmm. They most certainly did. Omniblivion was fighting you for first place for the longest time. I remember that. And they did the whole stream and everything involving it too. What else ended up happening? Also, in the pre-alphas, we also knew that Singularity had made some enemies. We knew that we had some certain people who had come from previous alphas who were not entirely too fond of the Singularity ideology. And we knew that the guys out in Virgo were, people like TNE, people like Esabab, etc. And we also knew that Super was out there in the ether somewhere, but we found out he was later in Aries, so we didn't know what was going on. It was just a mess. But we knew that we had some enemies going on. We also knew that the devs were gunning for us out in Lupus, because we, as much as Snoogums tried to hide his identity, we found out that Mr. Two Flower was not who he said he was, and we found out that he was actually Snoogums, and that Flavius, we kind of deduced that he was Cassius after we saw his name, and it's kind of common sense to connect the two Roman names together and then just figure out, oh, so that's who he is. So that was basically our thought process. Singularity, as big as we were, we had multiple enemies from many different directions, and there was a lot of unknowns going into Alpha 1. And we literally had to do diplomacy on the fly, which drove us, going forward throughout the entirety of the Alpha. I was trying to think if I could involve you somehow, Pizza, but you were still, just trying to figure out how to gameplay it at this point, and I was teaching you a little bit. So, what did you say?
Yeah, I was mostly just working with drop bears at that point and trying to get my alliance to function properly.
Yep, such is the life of leading the Newbie Alliance, but it is the life you chose.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever really succeeded in that part, but time will tell.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure you taught some people. I know you did, actually. I was in there.
We groom our leaders as newbie leaders and newbie alliances.
Yep, we most certainly do. One second.
So yeah, we went through quite a bit of early game diplomacy. There was a lot of diplomacy with Crash the Desktop, and I was really happy that we could consider them allies. The big elephant in the room was Baka. They joined in early. They went super militaristic heavy. They captured the first GT point like weeks ahead of everyone else, but they also whelped all of their fleets in order to do so. It was funny as hell. But
it was funny, but they did it.
Yeah,
they did exactly what they said they wanted to do.
It was impressive. But then we thought they were crazy, and B, we didn't take them seriously until they parked a station right outside, right, like way over here, outside Cassie's and Snoogum station, right around here, somewhere around here, and started wailing on them. The devs getting owned like week 2, week 3 by
this newbie alliance.
Yeah, that was
it was crazy. I I remember seeing the messages between Cassius and Baka, and I know that there was no love lost between them whenever Baka ended up leaving the server. But Jesus, it was just. I know that we were a bit removed from the conflict, so we only got to see the bits and pieces. But Baka made it no small. They made sure that everyone knew how well the war was going for them,
Oh
and
yeah.
the results were able to be seen pretty well.
And you know what? It was interesting. Like as Cassius was getting hit, he was calling on all the leaders of the alliances, bringing them together, because nobody liked the way Baka talked on the Discord servers. But he was trying to coordinate everyone to be against Baka. Baka was gonna be the big bad, that everyone would focus on. But
Uh-huh.
so in that sense, losing Baka actually kind of hurt us.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. They
we
end
had
up,
to take up that moniker.
yeah, we up here in Cygnus, we kind of grew in relative peace for at least the first few. There was, for as big and scary that we were, it was really our perception that we were this big scary alliance rather than these guys who were just frantically trying to figure out what to do and how to do it as fast as possible. The whole company change was new to us, so we didn't know what to do with uh, the alliance stations thing. We didn't know who was going to have the alliance station that would capture the actual Dyson sphere itself. So that was a point of contention all the way up until the mid game, because I know that uh, who is it? We had Singularity. Hive also made an attempt at leveling up Anchor Command, and UGA was a big contender until Singularity started rocketing ahead of everyone else within our own coalition to capture the what was it? The Dyson sphere. So, this
Yeah.
whole it was just a madhouse all around. It was just we didn't know what to expect, and there were other strong alliances that made their appearances at this time. The Phoenix fleet, that was obviously out in Phoenix, who eventually ended up joining the Lupus Coalition, which is currently the Click Click and Vergons, I believe. And then there was also the guys down in Monteceros who are like Peramble's Gambit. We didn't know anything about them. We made no attempts to reach out to them because we just simply thought that Monteceros was just going to be dominated by Baka the entire game. And then we also had people like that were out in Pegasus, people like the Hammer Lords, and obviously the guys out in Fornax as well, which was Crash the Desktop. There was action going on all over the map, and we had to do our best to keep up with it. Uh, we came in thinking that we were going to be in a superior position, and then all of a sudden, all these other alliances spring out of the ether, and then we're fighting for our top spot, quite literally, until we ended up, what is it? Just started eclipsing the others because we just weren't in conflict with anyone. We played our diplomacy right and decided to stay away from as much of this as possible. Uh, how are things out in Serpents? Because I know that you were rather removed from the rest of us, and I knew that I did a lot of the diplomacy for us out in Cygnus and all around us. How exactly were things out in Serpents? Because it was quite radio silence up until the late game whenever you guys started joining in fighting Vergons.
Well, I'm glad you asked. Um, during week one, when we were building up our first, few stations, ESA wore off, and it was actually most people only had their first station. So I had my second one down. Most people only had their first station. Some people had a second. And I had put together an alliance. We were the strongest alliance in this sector, but there was one rival alliance. It was X Dragons. The first thing I did, like within hours of the ESA wearing off, I tried to extend this other alliance leader to merge into ours. For us to work together. I tried really hard. He said no.
Hmm.
He refused. I pushed again and again. He kept saying no. So ESA wore off. I took my big ass at the time, big ass hammer, and completely annihilated him. Of course, as I expected, he quit. His alliance fail cascaded. I picked up his active members and took ownership of the sector really early on. After that, we started focusing on building up our empire. We did play quietly for the most part, but at the time we were watching Baka. We were I also had conversations with Omni, Crash the Desktop, couple other alliances I was kind of putting feelers out there. Virgo, it was pretty much radio silence early on, um, but you know, Baka had all the attention. All eyes were over here, especially as they started attacking Lupus, and we just continued to build our empire quietly, quickly. Um, I was the first hammer in the game developed enough to just start machine gunning NPCs, and I carted every single one of my fleets with 100% plunder. So I was actually profiting from 200k of each resource really early. I'm talking like what, week 3 or 4.
Yeah, it was real early. I remember.
Yeah, I mean my loot score went from freaking rank 900 to number one within a week. Um, and yeah, man, I was making so much resources that way, and I had just enough stations, especially with some allies who were helping me out with some corvettes here and there. We started clearing our GTs really early and settling on them.
Yeah, I remember that Singularity. We didn't really machine gun any of the GTs until towards the middle of the early game, or the middle game, I should really say, because we just didn't really see the reason to, up until the point that Admiral started getting so much free resources out of it that you would start seeing people like Linus, who is our current leader. He would start to steamroll ahead, even though, you can see a lot of the station layouts of all the top players. And Linus is actually building more along the lines of someone like me, who is only like a top 100 player, and he's still competing with Admiral for the top spot, even though there was this whole mathematical plan of maximum coverage, labor stations, all this kind of stuff that was really working well for you guys out in Serpents, and you can even still see it now if you zoom in, but I'm sure you don't want to give away those secrets just yet.
I really don't. Not quite. Not
But
until Alpha's
you guys,
over.
right, I'm sure you guys will see it at some point, but you guys really had a very ingenious setup that I should have really jumped on instead of just saying, that looks boring, I don't want to do it. And so, people like me and Pizzatime, we were just like, hey, set up next to a Grand Ocean planet and then just fortify it. Because Grand Oceans are ridiculously good for labor. They give 270, and then the spot that I have gives me an additional 180 from the large Misty Moon, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I was just getting a bunch of free labor, just sitting there. So I was like, well, I don't really need that many habitation domes. I have this awesome, freaking setup over here. So this is why I'll always be at. This is why me and Pizza will always be top 100 players, because we go for aesthetics rather than actual usefulness and practicality.
Right, but now we know that if you want labor, you're going to build stacked habitation domes, and you're going to really aim for the planets that give resources. The labor from planets are great early on, but when it comes time to fleet 40 slots of 1,500 ships per fleet, it's got to be the hab domes.
Right.
And the capital.
Right. Seemed we got a little bit sidetracked here about builds and stuff. Yeah. Back to the diplomacy section. I know that you guys out in the Hive and UGA out in Gemini had some run-ins with the Shadow Council. Can you go through that a little bit?
Yeah, I think we reached out to them at one point. We wanted to be friendly with them, but it just wasn't happening. And then, as I recall, Ben basically just declared them open season. So we kind of started fighting them, and then UGA ended up starting like 3 wars at one time. And
I remember that there was this big hunt for Hugelish also in Gemini, because we thought he was up there.
He reached out. Someone with a very similar name reached out to him.
THX.
Yeah, and we were like, we didn't trust him very much because of his name. It turned out to not be Hugelish, but I mean,
that was basically our whole diplomatic strategy, was because we thought it was him.
Like, we were gearing up to bomb him something fierce, and then I was just like, oh, it's this random new player. Felt kind of bad after that, but
he was a bit stronger than the rest of the people around him, so we thought there's no way he couldn't be Hugelish. It's the only way that this could happen. And then
he did some Hugelish tactics too, which made it even more suspicious.
Right. It's all good. Hugelish is obviously one of the veterans of the community. A lot of people can't. He's awesome. Let's just talk about that. Hoogalish is fucking cool.
He makes the game interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, he makes it interesting.
Like
And
it,
he's very helpful on messages as well. Anyway, so we ended up, that was the early game diplomacy, really, was that everyone was scrambling to secure their own sector. And, at the same time, try and figure out what was going on in Starborne. So, as we were doing all this, Baka obviously painted their huge flag on themselves, and thankfully it drew a lot of the attention off of Singularity, because we were also the big target at that point. So, as we decided to focus on how we were going to defeat Baka and how everyone else was going to respond to Baka, because Cassius also reached out to us, and we thought we were going to have this grand coalition to fight Baka, until the point that I thought that, wait, why are we doing this? Why would we go and try and exterminate the thing that was actually drawing all the attention off of us?
Well, I can tell you why. Because we were hoping to bring in Lupus as part of our coalition at the time, and
right.
Flavius seemed open to it at the time as well. The only reason why I didn't start really massacring Baka was because at the time there was a bug on Navy base return flight times. It was going for days instead of 10 hours.
Yeah, if the original 10 hours would work, it was the return time that was bugged, and then you would have to wait days for your flight to get back. I actually thought it was a feature up until the point that Storm said nope.
I thought that was a feature too, until I heard from Admiral that it wasn't. I was like, okay, even better.
Yeah. Yeah, so thankfully that got fixed, because these matches in the late game would have not been so exciting as they are right now. But anyway, I know that you guys had the intention of bringing in the Click into our fourth spot. I was a bit on the apprehensive side, because as little as I know about Cassius, the things that I do know is that he wants to win at any. He is definitely a winner. He does not want to coast to victory, and right. I didn't really make too many attempts to reach out to him. I know that whenever the Baka thing started really pressuring him, that I made my first attempt to, and that, we were going to talk about bringing assistance down there, but that was about the last time that we ended up speaking about this, politically to each other, because, we both had our own agendas, and I didn't think that Baka was so pressing on us that we actually had to go bring in all of our guys to go fight down in Sagita while we're trying to consolidate all the stuff up here in Cygnus. But I tried to recruit some other alliances to see if they could do that for us instead, to help us secure the sectors. And this is where the controversial stuff starts to pour in. Oh, buddy, I love it. So, Singularity. The first thing that people think of when they think of Singularity: helpful people, very good at the game. And we have a bit of a dark thing going on, thanks to a certain few members in our coalition. Absorb. You guys can actually see this if you watch the trailer video, that our good friend Old and Faded makes his appearance. And I remember in the chat box for that video, but you can just see that little Easter egg. But that's basically Singularity's MO, is that we want to win through kindness, and if we can't win through kindness, then we have to go through force. And those are really the only two options. So I decided to bring that into the forebear whenever we would actually do our diplomacy with people. Now, there were a lot of friendly alliances, a lot of people who would, they would say that they would do what we wanted. And, I said, hey, we'll help you out. If you end up helping us out enough, I'll bring you onto the Discord, and we can go from there. We can make this a lifelong partnership if you like. And I was totally honest the whole way through. I made no attempt to lie to anyone. I never said more than I needed to. And that was basically it. We reached out to people like Wrecking Machine out in Draco. We also reached out to those in Hydra, which were the Federation. And we also reached out to people like Wildly Inappropriate, because at this point, Crash the Desktop had left the server. And who else did we end up reaching out to? We tried with Vergons, and they denied us because they said they were a bunch of new players. They didn't want to get involved in high-stake politics. And then we reached out to the
What a
old crew.
lie.
Yeah, I know, right?
Turned into quite the lie.
And then we ended up reaching out to the guys out in Aries, the old crew, and they said, well, we're going to wait until the middle to the late game to really secure things and figure out where we want to go from there. So all these things did not solve our issues. I wanted a fourth coalition member, and I wanted to work from them from the beginning, because it's a lot easier to coordinate these things if everyone's all set up on the same, objectives, and that way we can all, work on the same page rather than just at the late game we pick some random alliance and then we run with them. So this caused quite the issue with me. But the thing that I thought was super nice was that people like Wrecking Machine, people like the Federation out in Hydra were a lot more friendly and helpful than I thought they would be. We also had friendships with Praxis Dominion, which was in our own sector, Cygnus. And despite the want from a lot of people within Singularity, we decided against flattening them as soon as we saw them. This contributed towards a few issues within Singularity. Chief among them was that the early game was grinding on for as long as it had, that people felt like if we ended up picking non-aggression packs with people and we don't, we go into the game guns blazing and we just flatten people with our superior strength, that this was a betrayal of that if we end up making diplomacy and doing pacts with people, that they thought this was somehow a betrayal of how things really were. Now, keep in mind, I understand where they're coming from. I truly do, because I know how much I love to non-aggression pack everybody, because my sole interest is really on making
The
friendships
endgame.
that last,
Well,
and the end game too.
Right. So, I mean, you and I were kind of in a different way, similar of mind. In Serpens, I had a rule like we do not attack any active players because people are going to drop out of the game, and those active players that we didn't attack will be the guys filling in those slots and keeping our alliance super active in our sector. And yeah, short-term loss, long-term gain. We still
Right.
to this day have very active members in Serpens, whereas there are other sectors where only like 2 or 3 active players in the entire sector.
Right. And I know that on the Hive side as well, that you guys were really pushing towards being friendly towards the new players, because, obviously we have to, the Hive's whole purpose at this point was to sort through who actually was active and who wanted to contribute, and then make an effort towards bringing those people into Singularity and into our coalition. It was basically like the sorting hat of of alliances, where we just sent people in. If you do really good and you can work as a team, then great. We will figure out what to do from there with you. And from what I understand with my talks with One of Many and everyone, that's still the primary purpose of Hive. Our interpretation, Linus's interpretation, Olden Fade's interpretation, even One of Many's interpretation is a lot different than Pizzatime's and I's, where we thought, you know what, we'll get into that point here in a bit, because that's a rather long and extended subject. But I know that the guys out in Hive, they had their own style of diplomacy, which was basically do whatever Singularity tells you what to do, and then we'll figure out what to do from there. But we always took into account everyone's opinion. I especially did, which obviously brought us to our point of contention with some of the other members of Singularity that just wanted to go in guns blazing, blow up everything, kill them all. Yeah, metal. And we were definitely in a position to do that. However, my whole reasoning behind it was that, number one, I didn't want to kick out these active players that could eventually end up joining us and see how nice we were and how much we were teaching the community, and then bring them in. And then number two is that we would be burning a lot of resources fighting these players that we could have been saving up for our late game, because we didn't know how many Corvettes we were going to have at 3 months. I think the pre-alpha only lasted around like 1 month or so. I know it wasn't 3 months, maybe 6 weeks or something like that. I know it wasn't
like
3 months.
A month and a half.
Yeah, it was. It was about the half the time that Alpha 3 actually, on a much smaller map with a lot less people. So, naturally, I'm inclined to try and help out as many people as possible. So that really drove a lot of our diplomacy, a lot of friendship, with as many people as possible, but still trying to keep us a target in mind. And as I've been hinting at this entire time, there were some dissenting voices within Singularity. These voices eventually got very, very loud, and some people threatened to quit over the actual decisions being made. And, at that point I was like, well, I'm going to end up moving to a new job. I'm going to be, going to a new place. I'm going to be doing all these other things. I need to really focus on myself here. And this whole leading alliances thing is really taking a bit out of me. So I decided, hey, who here wants to end up leading? Who here wants to end up taking the mantle of Singularity leader? Admiral can do it because he was out leading the Corps. Pizzatime obviously couldn't do it because he's a rather new player in the grand scheme of things. And, just personally, I wouldn't end up trusting any new player with leading the biggest alliance, the strongest alliance within the game at that point, because we were number one around that point. So then the, other candidates, people like Klaus, too busy, Old and Faded didn't want to lead an alliance. And then out of nowhere, our good friend Linus from Alpha 7 decided to say, hey, I'll take the spot. And then so began the era of Linus. Our good friend Linus. I know you're smiling, but he showed some good promise. He had a plan in mind. He decided what he wanted to do. It was completely contradictory to everything that I wanted to do. But hey, man, he had his plan and he had support behind it, and I was all ready to go down with it. Yeah.
I think all three of us have very different leadership styles, definitely.
Right. Yeah. Between, you're very newbie centric. I try to find the middle ground between the old veterans who just want to go out and kill everybody, and then the newbie centric, hey, let's be friends with everybody. And then, obviously Linus is in the other camp. So yeah, I had all these grand plans for diplomacy and stuff, but I just wasn't able to fully realize them at that point because obviously of the growing tensions between everyone in Singularity over the leadership style. And on top of that, the fact that our allies at that point had been really pressing us. They've been doing some rather shady stuff, and this is where the controversial part is going to come in, because there were some talks that I had with a lot of these people, and it turns out that not everything that I had conversations with their leaders did not leak out. So this is your moment right now to figure out exactly what happened between Singularity and your alliance in Alpha 1. So, moving on from there, what exactly happened? Say again?
I don't understand that.
Well, I'm sure that someone from Wrecking Machine or Federation is going to end up watching this.
Okay.
Because it would explain a little bit of what actually happened in the diplomacy and what led to the fights that we have currently today, and then eventually the coalitions that formed. So within our local area, we had obviously Federation and Hydra, and then we had often in Hydra, I already said that. In Draco we had Wrecking Machine, and then we had Praxis Dominion within Cygnus. So it was all these sectors over here, just these three sectors. And so we decided that since I was still pretty much doing the diplomacy at this point, that we were going to sick Praxis Dominion, who is another newbie group, but was still a big out-of-game alliance. We were going to sick them and try and see if they could actually secure a sector on their own with our backing. So we decided to sick Praxis Dominion on Draco. We wanted them to go into Draco because it was strategically closer to them, because they were located on the southern end of Cygnus and we were towards the northern end, and the fact that they had been getting attacked by those in Draco, so they wanted to have a chance to counterattack. So we gave them that opportunity. I said, hey guys, you want to go secure Draco? Go for it. I promise we won't hit you. And so we kept our end of the promise. When we said, hey, if you guys end up securing Draco, I will bring you into the coalition, and that'll be that. So it's a rather enticing offer if you think about it. You're a newbie alliance that comes in, and you hear from the number one alliance, which happens to be in your sector, hey, we won't attack you, just attack these guys. Wrecking Machine were only rank 20 or 19 at this point in the influence rankings. So we thought they were just another newbie alliance, and that they would fold over rather quickly. So they were all for it. So we send them after Wrecking Machine. So, that whole thing ends up happening. At the same time, we are talking to Federation out in Hydra because they were growing rather quickly. They ended up becoming like number 8, number 9 alliance on the leaderboards. And, they had some real presence. I know that Lloydski showed up for the actual roundtable as well. So I knew that they were trying to be serious competitors. So I got with them as well. And I said, hey, if you guys, they were, Singularity also had a thing that we were doing where we were putting stations within their sector, literally hexes away from their capitals and stuff. There was a whole plan for people like Brazcool, for people like me, for Pizzatime, which, he can attest to this, to all go into Hydra and take all their points and just blow it all up. And we thought it was going to be a bloodbath on all sides. However, every alliance outside of Federation went AFK. And then Federation just cannibalized all the rest of the people that were within their sector. And then we were like, what's the point? We've already made a pact with these guys, and now we're stuck here. So we made arrangements with them to secure their GTs. And then at the same time, we got news that out in Draco, Wrecking Machine had thoroughly beaten Praxis Dominion, which came as a total surprise to me because, obviously we had backing them up and all that. We already had a pact with them, and we thought we could spook Wrecking Machine into working with us. It did not work out the way that I had wanted. That's to say the least. Yeah, that is to say the least. So I sent to them that, hey, we can get rid of Praxis Dominion for you guys. We can call them back if you guys just work with us. And then we can I made the same offer to them. If you guys do exactly what I say, then we can go into the 4th coalition spot, and then whoever survives to the end will get it. And of course, I didn't tell any of the other alliances like Federation or Praxis about this. So I got the message back from Mr. Valence, or was it Valence? I think it was Ava Storm, actually. He said, well, we've already pretty much removed Praxis Dominion from our sector, so if in the late game you guys are still interested, we might just take you up on your offer. And I'm like, oh, man, this is not how I wanted things to go. I just wanted everyone to work together all at the same time, and then everything would have then I could have had the pick of the litter of 4th alliance for our coalition, because there was UGA, Hive, and Core, and we had figured at some point that either Hive was going to merge or we were going to find a way to fit a new alliance slot. Actually, the alliance slots weren't actually revealed at this point, so we didn't know how many people could be in one coalition. So we were totally confused on things, and at this point, we were just like, well, if Wrecking Machine wins over here, then didn't they attack our allies? And of course, the whole bloodthirsty faction thing was like, oh, we have to kill them now. They attacked our allies. It's a casus belli. We have to go out and we have to kill them. And at that point, I was like, yeah, maybe we should. Maybe we should just finally attack somebody for once. And so began the war between Wrecking Machine and Singularity, which eventually led into them joining Coalition Monoceros, and that is why they're one of our current enemies right now. Because we didn't crush them as fast as I thought we would, and it was just crazy.
Right on our front doorstep.
Yep, right there. And it was all because of me trying to manipulate everybody to work with us. So I guess I need to work on my manipulation skill a little bit, because it is...
You think?
So to add on to this series of bad decisions, the Federation guys decided to go AFK on us. Their leader said that I had said that Fear Magier, I know I always say his name wrong. I'll just call him Fire Mage because that's what he tells me to call him. So Mr. Fire Mage, who was spying for us in Pegasus, decided to go secure some GTs out in Hydra. And we were saying to him, don't worry about it. We'll make sure that you aren't attacked in Hydra, all this kind of stuff. Well, lo and behold, our good allies, Mr. Federation and friends, decided to attack Mr. Fire Mage because he was not wearing the Sing tag. And whenever I went to Lloydski, who is leading Federation, I said, hey, can you please not attack Fire Mage, because he's an undercover Sing agent right now securing these GTs that you had promised that we could take. He said, well, it's our GT, so we're going to take it. And that was basically it for conversation between me and Lloydski, because I tried to contact him a couple more times. He did not respond to me, and that was the issue I ran into, is that now I have an alliance on our doorstep attacking one of my members, and I'm supposed to just sit idly by while it happens. So, again, manipulation did not work out, and we had to declare war on Federation as well. So then here we are in the middle of 2 wars, and then I don't know if at this time Vergons were starting to get aggressive with the core, or if it was us trying to fight Baka or somebody, or Click Click. It was just a madhouse once again.
Yeah, around that time, shortly after that, around Christmas Eve, well, before that, there was a little territory dispute along these 2 GTs right here between Virgo and Serpens. And, I did some diplomacy. We kind of cleared the air, established borders. And Christmas Eve, they launched a full-scale assault on us. We defended it rather well. They actually launched a full-scale assault on me, kind of a repeat of last year. They did the same thing. Both times they lost. They whelped a lot of fleets trying to hit me. And that kind of initiated a rather long conflict between us and Virgo. We retaliated, and I started one-shotting their capitals pretty early in the game. But then I stopped because we still had so many GTs covered by NPCs. I didn't want to risk whelping all of our gunships and fleets before we had acquired those points. So without, Cassius actually offered to initiate a peace, a truce between Virgo and Serpens. I was wailing on them, like me, and I was smacking their capitals down hard. And I said no, which was a mistake on my end. I should have accepted it, because in the end I just kept the war going. I didn't attack them though. I stopped attacking them, and I started really helping with clearing all the GTs, all the NPCs every day. A 10-hour flight there and back. Even over here in Cassiopeia, Ares, and Equilus, just clearing out as many GT every day, clearing out a GT, and getting more resources. By the time people were at like 4 million resources looted, I was at basically like 28 million resources looted. Yeah, it was nuts. But at the same time, like, we needed those points. Like, make them. If we build on those points early, we can, then focus on the end game in PvP. But if you whelp all your ships before you have at least the points in your own sector, and if your allies don't have all their points, and you whelp all your ships, you're kind of fucked.
The question I have for you is, why were you out in Cassio clearing out GT?
Well,
this is all news to me.
I started clearing out the GTs after I spent a decent day of diplomacy, basically bringing in both sectors, the remaining active players in both these sectors, into our coalition by merging their players into our alliances. It was one fateful day where we basically acquired like 15 points just by picking up these players, clearing out their NPCs, and bring them into the alliances.
I see. I thought you were just doing a bunch of work over in our neck of the woods, and that's all that I remember. I did not know anything was happening
everywhere.
in
I was doing Equus, Cassiopeia. I don't think I touched Cygnus much. I did, I think, one in Gemini. I did every single one in Orion, as well as a decent amount in Pegasus as well. So
yeah, you definitely kept active.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the thing that sucked. I really wanted to continue, and there even came a point where I partnered up with one of my other fellow militaristic players, and we were actually one-shotting capitals. I mean, really early in the conflict. We're talking week 8, maybe, week 7 even, and we could have kept that war going, but the risk was too high. We needed to focus on the end game, and so I stopped.
Yeah. You got very strong in a very short amount of time, which was a lot faster than even I thought you were going to get. Obviously, it was a combination of a lot of things, but chiefly among them, the fact that all your new players were playing like experienced players. They all seemed like they really were interested in playing the game, and they just, as you can see, if you look at the Alliance leaderboards and stuff, you can see like Core is number 2 up until the point that you got hit yesterday, but
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys were number 2 for a long time, and Singularity was number 1, and we had experienced players, so it was just out of nowhere that Core just shot up, meteoric rise out of nowhere with the help of just 2 veterans. Well, if you can even consider Odie a veteran because he joined in the pre-alpha.
Exactly. It's all about training up your people, man, and culling the inactives, giving them guidance. I call them Admiral achievements.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of new players and guiding them on the path, Pizza, I know that up in your neck of the woods that you were basically in 2 wars at the same time, isolated from Singularity and everyone else. Your only ally in the sector was UGA, and that you were fighting the Shadow Council and you were fighting all of Orion at the same time with with UGA, and it was largely you and UGA who basically cleared out the rest of Orion for the coalition. Can you give us a little bit of insight on that?
First things first, UGA is a bloodthirsty monster, and I'm glad they're on our side. Like, we started the Shadow Council war 2 days later. I'm hearing, we started like 3 more wars in Orion. I was thinking, I don't know, I might have bit off a little bit too much because we already were aiming to go to Hydra with our little task force. So I was already over going to Hydra, being pulled every which way, bombing Shadow Council now. I don't know. I didn't have too much to do with the Orion conflict because I was gearing up for Hydra. But I know I sent a good number of our people went over there and started hitting things.
Yeah, I know Bishi went over there, and who else exactly went over there? Was it one of many who also started participating?
One of many, Nuffy started coming to Hydra with us.
Right.
Because UGA got Orion under control rather quickly, and then, we were still going after the Federation.
Right. Yeah, we were.
Until you said
at that point we were pretty well pretty well done on fighting all these other coalitions, and we decided that maybe we're in too many wars at this point. Maybe this this situation is a little bit untenable, because if a big alliance ends up joining the conflict, we might just end up folding over. So anyway, so we're at this moment, Singularity's in 2 wars, UGA and Hive are in 3 wars, and then Core is out in Virgo fighting and one-shotting capitals at the same time, trying to clear every single GT across the map. So it was like I said, this game, if you allow it to be, can get rather hectic real quick, as long as you have an idea on what you want to do every single day. So at this point, go ahead.
I also wanted to add, around this time, well, like right before that, Baka basically fell apart. They all quit the game, and Lupus started growing quietly for quite a while.
Yeah, we thought they were fighting the remains of Baka. We didn't know when they had quit. We didn't know if they had quit. We spent a long time trying to figure out what was going on down in Sagita before we decided to make our big move, because obviously we were still, just watching from the sidelines all the way up in the northern half of the galaxy, while the southern half was still just fighting amongst itself. So we just, we still tried the policy of abstaining and not getting involved in conflicts that didn't involve us. And
and it didn't help that Baka also, like, as a final middle finger to Admiral, just whelped all their fleets on my station.
Yeah, they definitely did do that. I remember seeing the combat reports.
Station, yeah.
Yeah. But that thus ends the saga of Baka. Hopefully we end up seeing them again. Hopefully they're a little bit more mild-mannered. I would appreciate that.
Tone down some of the arrogance, but that's about it.
Yeah, I would definitely appreciate that.
The arrogance was fine. It was just the things said.
The manner of arrogance.
Yeah, the harsh insults and trolling was.
Linus and Baka have a lot in common. Let's just say that much.
Yeah.
But anyway, not to shoot down on Linus or anything, but he's got his style. It's just who he is.
Yep.
But anyway, so at this point we have officially hit the mid game, and Jesus, we're like an hour into this video.
Like 4 times.
Well, we're really in the mid game at this point then, because we had been spending a lot of time building up our anchor command on our alliance station because we had finally decided that Singularity was going to be the one that would actually lead the coalition. And we decided an ingenious strategy. What we did was we decided because other alliances that are allied to you can't actually ship resources to your alliance station. So what we did is that Mr. Admiral and his friends in the Corps decided to not level up their anchor command whatsoever, and we would just send raiding fleets on 10-hour trips back and forth to steal as many of the resources as possible for our own alliance station. And then we would come back, and then we just started gaining levels really quickly because we had in effect 2 alliances that were feeding us at the same time. So we gained really fast. UGA, as well as they didn't end up following this as, nearly to the same way that we ended up doing it between Core and Singularity. And we just ended up capturing the Dyson Sphere itself. I don't remember if it was us or Lupus who actually got it first. I believe it was us by like a fraction of a few seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
It was really close, and it shouldn't have been. So I can only assume the guys out in Lupus, Click, and all them, were doing the exact same thing that we were doing. But they also had a head start on us because we were fighting 15 different wars. So anyway, so Cygnus is formed, Lupus is formed. Eventually, Libra is formed, and then it falls apart for whatever reason. Hopefully one day I get to talk to Libra Orange Fleet and figure out what happened.
So what I heard from that was the leader was actually AFK, and one of the officers kind of just went ahead and formed it. And then they realized that the leader was the only one who could actually invite other alliances in, and he was gone, so they had to disband, basically.
Well, that's the misery of testing in an alpha. So you run into these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But it comes with the game. This game is very much still in development, and the fact that it functions as well as it does, with as many people that are actually working on it. I believe it was 13 at the time of events that we're talking about right now, and now it's all the way up to 14 or 15. So, they're still very much a small company making a massive game. So, again, can't say it enough. Props to the guys up in Iceland, Solid Clouds, for making this, awesome game that we're all playing. But, beyond my praise for the guys up in Iceland. Yeah, I know, right? But, it's still the truth. But anyway, so Libra, picks up and then falls apart, and then the guys in Monoceros quietly also start their own coalition as well, while we're still working on, diplomacy and stuff up in Cygnus. So then comes another point of controversy, is the fact that we found out shortly before we ended up capturing the Dyson Sphere how many actual alliances we could bring in. I was of the opinion that we could bring in about 5 alliances total. And I had this whole plan. I knew exactly who I wanted to bring in. It was our 4 alliances: Core, UGA, Singularity, and Hive. And then the 5th slot would just be, a shot between Wrecking Machine and Federation. And as we can both see, well, I shouldn't say both see, all 3 of us can see that did not pan out the way I wanted. So we were in a trick bag. We were looking for this, final alliance. And then we found out that you can only have about 4 alliances once you level up the federal court building up to level 2. So then came another choice, was that we have 4 alliances, but, at this point, people have gone AFK, people have left. Who do we decide to bring in? And who do we decide to merge in case we need an extra set of GTs and stuff? Hive was not in the best spot at this point because Hive was full of new players that, despite the direction efforts of the leadership, it was just not tenable within Gemini for all these people to just suddenly, spring out and capture every GT that they could see in other sectors at this point. UGA took the lion's share of the GTs, and Hive was pretty much left with a couple. I know that you secured one, Pizzatime, and I know that a few others secured it as well. I believe the Drop Bear secured a couple.
Berserker Knight.
Cuddy
Yeah,
House,
Bowser Knight.
but not one of many has it. Bowser Knight's UGA.
Yeah, he's a UGA. That was the whole Hydra.
Nuffy has one, I think.
Yeah, you guys didn't really get too many, but you were still very competitive in the fact that you had top players within your alliance. the fact that you were the ones that drew the unlucky straw within the competition between you and UGA, and so we ended up deciding that a merge would probably be the best. Now there are some conflicting points here within Singularity and everything.
It didn't go as smoothly
Well,
as you're
it
saying.
was also around that time that our Dyson sphere got attacked.
Right.
No, this was a couple weeks before that where we started talking about it, I think.
Yeah, we were talking about the merge and stuff around this time period and figuring out what exactly wanted to happen. Of course, this was mainly between me and Pizzatime because, you know, he was basically leading the Hive at this point, and I was leading Singularity, although I had dropped the leadership tag to Linus, and I just wanted to make sure all of our diplomacy was going good with everyone. So we were of the opinion that Hive was going to be a final alliance within this coalition, that everyone was going to merge into Hive, and that would be the name that we went by. It was going to be just as we said it would be: Core, Singularity, UGA, and Hive. And so this is where the point of contention happens, where the attack on our Dyson sphere happens. At this point, we we got hit pretty hard up at our Dyson sphere by was it Click or was it just like Vergons of people? I forget all the parties.
It was both
literally
the
everybody.
It was both the coalitions, Monoceros and Click coalition.
Lupus.
The Lupus. Yeah.
Yeah, both of them decide to hit us at our Dyson sphere in this huge attack. Just to put it frankly, we just weren't prepared for it. We didn't think it was going to happen, and we thought that our diplomacy had bought us some time, but they decided and jumped the gun in typical veteran fashion, well, non-Sing veteran fashion, to ambush us. And they caught us off guard.
There was less than a day left to get our fourth alliance in.
Yeah, and we found out that we were going to be the only ones that would actually be able to make it too. So they made the strategically sound choice on their end to bomb us and make sure that we did. And we took a lot of their ships down with us, but the issue still remains that they ended up reducing our Dyson sphere back down to 0 on all fronts, and we were stuck now with only 3 alliances that we could possibly bring in, because we only had enough time to bring in our third alliance, and that was Core and UGA. So Sing, Core, UGA, and then we had to figure out something to do with Hive, and this is where. TOC at this point was helping us out massively as well. So we ran into some troubles, to put it kindly. I know that there was a lot of confusion between me and Pizzatime, and then between us and Klaus and Admiral and everyone else, that we didn't know what the exact role of Hive was, because we thought they were going to be a final tier coalition. And here we are, just like, well, TOC is going to come in. Well, who do we get rid of? And so this is the point where I believe Mr. Pizzatime can hop in and explain a bit of his side.
I think it was like maybe a week and a half before the Dyson sphere, and I was just scrolling through Singularity chat, and I saw enough you post something, and then I see a response from Linus saying something along the lines of, "The Hive never had a coalition spot," and that was really surprising to me because I had never heard of this prior.
Yeah, so I think he lacked a little bit of tact in relaying that news. The idea of Hive, we had Hive in last alpha, and the intentions of Hive was kind of like both a newbie alliance and a prisoner of war alliance. Like, hey, we don't want to kill you, but we also don't want you to be a threat. You're kind of in an area that could be considered a threat, so like you know, you're welcome to leave your alliance and join the Hive. It's kind of like our protected baby alliance, and then, you know, if you're active, if you contribute, if you grab GTs, you know, whatever the case may be, you'll have the first shot into our active alliances, and so that kind of, like, all the vets from the previous alpha already had that understanding, but I think the communication broke down with all the new players coming in, and
I don't think
including me.
It wasn't relayed well.
Yeah,
and
that's on all of us, honestly. It was a really bad miscommunication.
Like we were the 3 people leading Hive were just like it came out of nowhere, so we were pretty upset about it. But then as we came around to it, like, as long as everyone that's active and contributing gets spots for the most part, I mean, I guess it's no different. Which ended up happening, but
thankfully.
Every spot had to be fought for.
Yeah, there was a lot of competition for these final few spots. And thankfully, we stayed true to our friends in the Hive, and I'm certainly happy with the outcome. But it's a shame that, those bastards out in Lupus and Monoceros, they decided to deny us our 4th spot, and we could have had the Hive up there with us. But hey, man, this is the nature of the game. They did the smart move. We responded in a poor fashion, and so we had to make the hard choices, just as we had to make them all throughout this alpha.
We could have had the Hive and TOC, and that led to a fraction in TOC as we did, one final round of culling. We had promised TOC that 4th spot, and that we were going to still absorb the Hive members in all the culled spots. Instead, we had culled spots, but then we had to bring in both Hive and TOC, so we brought in most of the Hive, and about half of TOC's active players before we ran out of slots. And that created a huge division, as you can even see on the map, between brother against brother. It's basically right now a huge civil war where
In
the
Ares.
TOC members that couldn't, I mean, the leadership understood the situation. Like, we lost the Dyson Sphere level. That it was Lupus's fault, but the members who didn't get a spot in the coalition were just really sore about it, and they really wanted to win, and that's understandable. So, unfortunate, but they ended up joining the enemy Monoceros coalition and creating an additional front and contention for GTs.
My favorite comment about this whole scenario was from Olden, because at this point in the political discussion channel, or was it the recruitment? I don't remember which, for A1, that the meme that was going around that Singularity is a bunch of backstabbers and that we lied the whole way through and that, we were we were just being evil, all this kind of stuff. Olden Faded made the point that Lupus and Monoceros just denied 20 people the chance of actually winning the game with us.
20 newbies.
Yes, 20 newbies, because we had already filled up all of our spots with veterans, but at this point, we still had the 20 that we could have had, and then from there, we could have gotten all 20 of those people that shiny avatar. So it was really a choice that we had to make. It split up Ares. It turned everyone against each other. Not intentionally. We really did fill up every single slot that we had with every
We're literally hours away from having everybody too. It's like we tried our damnedest.
Yeah, we really did. And so that's why the situation in Ares happened the way that it did. Yeah. So with that ended up happening.
Now we enter the late game.
Yes, we entered the late game and how things are currently. So we were a lot more organized than I thought we would be, compared to the early game and mid game. How we are right now, we actually have a lot of people that, know what they're doing and they know how to attack and stuff, but we still ran into some issues as well. The fact is that number one, we're fighting a 120-man super coalition of two separate, coalitions, I should say. And then there's literally just us 60 players versus them. And so we have to we've been fighting every single day, tooth and nail against these guys, where we thought we were going to coast to victory because, if we ended up getting that 4th spot, we would have gotten a whole new wealth of GTs. We could have literally just waited out the end of the game. And thankfully, our frenemies down in Lupus and Monoceros made it a bit more interesting for us. And now they still continue to make it interesting for us. Because while Singularity in the Coalition Cygnus are ahead by about maybe 10 GTs or so, it's still only 10 GTs. There's still a lot of fight left in these guys. There's still a lot of fight left in us, especially. And we've had some major hits on some of their hammers. I know that I personally was part of attacking Esabab, Tierney, etc. You can see the combat reports for yourselves if you're in any of these alliances, but
one of those didn't go too well.
Yeah, we've also had our share of mess up. We've helped a lot of ships. There have been hundreds of thousands of ships at this point. I would say even millions around this point now that we have burned just in this endgame fight. and it's been very exciting. I'm really excited to see the future of Starborne and see how things go, because if the end game is this, time consuming but exciting at the same time, all that really needs to be repaired is really just the early game, because the beginning of a new server is always full of rush. You're always trying to figure out who exactly you're playing with. How are you going to grow faster? What can you innovate on while still, taking in with you what can actually work, and then, just going on from there, making sure everyone around you does the same thing. I know for a fact that I'm on several different servers beyond server one, and it's still a rush to just play Starborne over again on a new server, because you don't know who you're going to play with. Hopefully, something that Singularity brings into in future servers is that the fact that we don't underestimate our competition so much, because we ended up finding a lot of people that were actually capable of fighting, and a lot of people got taught by the Vergons and Click and all these other alliances how to actually play, and it wasn't a steamroll as I had originally thought it would be.
Yeah, and that war right now is still ongoing. I'm gonna share a story. This is kind of gonna backtrack way to the very beginning real quick. It's a story not many people know about, but during the pre-alphas, we had a long discussion on Discord with Graetir, Snuggums, about Singularity, about the machine of veterans that you know were essentially planning to steamroll the next alpha. And
Right.
there was a lot of debate, because even internally, like, I don't I want Singularity's image to be community friendly. I want us to be like, hey, we want to build you up, and for the enemies, we want to kill you with a smile. Um, but and but at the same time, we're a small core group of veterans, and we love playing together, and we didn't want to not play together. um, and so we were in contention, because the devs were like, hey, Singularities, it's kind of overwhelming for the new player to come in and see Singularity, like,
Especially in Alpha 7.
right, exactly, like 10 times higher in influence than all the other alliances. Um, and we understood that, like, we actually debated, like, well, do we want Singularity to be the way we had kind of planned? We did a lot of pre-planning, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, if it's not Singularity, it's going to be some other alliance. It doesn't take much to become take that number one spot. So the devs understood, we understood. It was a very conflicted point. Um, and so we didn't know what the devs had planned, but I figured right around the time Baka started falling apart, um, that Snuggums and Cassius, I started to we started to learn about all the devs' identities and where they were spawning. And we started around right before Lupus was formed. I started to realize the devs all spawned and are all starting to coordinate against Singularity. That's
The
when I knew,
pieces
like,
started coming together.
right, like I started having that paranoia. Like, that's why I was trying so hard to bring Cassius into our coalition. Get that alliance in there, better with us than against us. Me, I much would have rather coasted a bit more than than
Yeah.
now than what we're going through now. But it was that paranoia, it's that suspicion, and it turned out to be true. Like, the devs banded together, they intended on making it a close fight, and it has been. Um,
Yeah. We
so
didn't have to do.
that was
We
their
didn't.
solution to Singularity.
Yeah, they ended up putting. Well, I shouldn't say they ended up. They are putting up a great fight against us, and it's not something that I really expected. I thought personally, I knew the devs were going to go against us, that they wanted to fight us because no one wants to see Singularity win 3 alphas in a row.
Well,
Nobody does.
and here's the thing. So, well, we didn't win Alpha 6. That was kind of the beginning of the formation. Singularity was,
You're cutting in and out, friend.
oh, okay. Singularity was formed in Alpha 6 at the very end. It was literally like the last month of the alpha, if not the last few weeks, and we climbed up the ranks super fast. I took over leadership there because all three leaders went AFK. Took all the active members, brought them together. That's one of my core strengths. Is I'm an includer. I bring people together. Um, and but we were still very much a newbie alliance, and just egg, believe it or not, he wiped us out like single-handedly, and we
Yeah.
we we had a lot of learning lessons there. But in Alpha 7, I brought some of our friends over from Alpha 6 and recruited some more vets and did a lot of pre-planning. I mean, we're talking, it was 6 months between alphas, and I was on Discord planning and learning and planning the entire time. Ask Snuggums, like I was on Discord chat with him every day between the alpha wasn't even on. Um, and that's where I started really grow and experience and understanding of the flow of the game. So we came into Alpha 7 with the plan. And here's kind of one of the points part of the story that not many people know. So in Alphas 1 through 6, the devs ruled the alphas. They always won. In Alpha 7, the devs joined us and we won. So this Alpha 8, this final alpha is the one and true chance for the players to beat the devs.
Exactly.
And that is what's at stake here. It is devs versus players. It is,
right.
It is the final end all be all.
As much as people dislike Singularity for the various things that have happened throughout our time, we have done a lot of good for the community in this kind of sense, because for the sole fact that the players are actually playing the game. We're playing the game and we're competing against the developers, where this has not happened before in this kind of sense, where you can find devs that are openly playing the game, or in this case semi-openly playing the game, and then we end up fighting them as players, and then it's the real chance to actually beat the devs at their own game. Now, it's a turning point within Starborne. Something that I really wanted to emphasize on is the fact that Singularity, we may be veterans from previous alphas and stuff. We may be a group of friends that, for me, it's only been around a year or so that I've actually known these guys, whether it be fighting them or with them, leading, or just being a member. But it's the fact that remains that we're all still what?
I remember that pot shot you made when. Okay, so we in Alpha 7.
You're breaking up again.
Ah, damn it. In Alpha 7, can you hear me better?
Yeah, I got you.
In Alpha 7, Cannibal was leading a massive coalition of alliances against Singularity, and it was, I'm sure it was hellish for him, but we ended up winning. But during Alpha 7, he likes to have these meetings, these on voice call meetings with all the alliance leaders, and we had a spy. A leader spy in his coalition, an informal coalition. And he sent me an audio clip of one of these meetings, and I remember what you said. Do you want to tell the crowd what you said?
You know what? Let's just leave it to their imagination. Leave it to the dustbins of history, and they can imagine what I said. But it wasn't kind. Let's just say that much.
Not kind, and I was nothing but nice to you, good sir.
I want to hear this audio clip now.
I'll tell you about it after the meeting. How about that?
All right.
But anyway, before we got sidetracked off of that, as much as I fought against Singularity, and then whenever I joined, and then I ended up leading it, and then talked with everyone, got to know everybody, the fact still remains is that Singularity is the game's best chance right now to actually topple the devs in their monarchy over the game. So that's always been something that's been a driving force in my political discussions with people.
It's not only the best chance, it's the only chance. The devs have communicated that this is basically going to be their last alpha playing. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard way back. And
they said not openly. They just can't, it's not going to be like how silly it is right now, where we find out who Two Flower is within like 3 days of him actually playing the game. It's going to be a lot more hidden. It's going to be a lot more stealthy and stuff. And this is, like I said, this is our last real chance to actually beat the devs at their own game.
Right, but
And
you are going to be working with them now.
hey, we don't reveal that just yet.
I didn't know
put
that
that
was
technical
hush-hush
difficulty
information
screen up.
still.
Yeah, it's still a little bit. I want to reveal it later. But anyway, this is our last real chance to really beat the devs. Everyone within Singularity is just a player in the game that has spent an inordinate amount of time planning the game, talking to people, enriching the game. Even the fact that we just put out guides and stuff, the fact that we talk to people, the fact that we're trying to create content for the game. This is really what our vision of Starborne is. And, it would only make sense that the people who spent the most time would end up beating the devs who created the game. I know Coalition Monoceros has it a little bit differently. I know people in Lupus have it a little bit differently. Hey, man, I got no qualms. If you guys win, I'm fine with that. If we win, hey, man, more power to us. It'd be awesome to see the name Singularity at the end, at the very top. Coalition Cygnus, with all of our allies and friends at the very top. And then, we can officially say that we won without dev support against the devs and against 2 other coalitions of people actively trying to gun us down from the start.
We have to fight every day till the bitter end, man.
Of course we do. But before we start patting ourselves on the back and everything, I think it's fine to allow the meeting to come to a close and allow these final few days actually just play themselves out. I believe there's around 11 or 10 days that we have left. And then, of course, there's the player party. So if you guys are coming to the player party, I really hope and pray you're going to be able to see me. It's all dependent on a few things. I know Mr. Admiral's thinking about coming up there.
No, I'm going to be there.
Oh, boy, he's going to be up there.
Yeah.
A variety of the mods are going to be up there. Of course, the devs are going to be up there. And I know that some unannounced people have said that they want to go up there as well. So, just keep in mind, make sure you watch for the live stream, which I'm sure is going to happen. Unfortunately, Mr. Pizzatime has better obligations, so he can't come up and nerd out with the rest of us. But, hey, man, I'm sure that we'll all have a good time. So I hope to see you guys all there. I'm glad that you spent the time to learn a little bit about the lore of Alpha 1 with us, and may the best man win.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.
Gonna be us, but
Take it easy, guys.
Yeah, take it easy.
take it easy.